Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. I'm so excited to be here. I didn't know if my lovely hosts wanted to start off. I just jumped in there and said hi. But hi, I'm Stephanie Rothstein, and I'm sorry, I just like jumped it there. Did you all want to welcome your GEGs to this?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We are so excited. Welcome, all of you. I'm Reshma Honap, most of you know, and I'm the leader of GEG Pune. And then we have Dr. Vishal Varia, GEG leader of Ahmedabad. So we now have GEG AP combining our sessions and bringing more exciting and valuable inputs for you for our Saturday sessions. So today we have Stephanie Rostein, and I cannot say enough about Stephanie because when I started looking out for GEGs, the first name that popped up on the profile was Stephanie Rostein and GEG NorCal, Northern California. So I just randomly sent her an email and I said, I really want to join such kind of a group where I can learn and then share to others and inspire them as you guys do. And she has been really helpful since then. She's a leader of Global GEG, and she connected me to GEG Southern California, where I live, and I got in touch with more amazing people around here. She's a Google certified trainer, innovator, coach. Uh, her profile, if I read, I think I can take up her whole 1 hour. So welcome, Stephanie. We are so glad that you took out some time for us. And please introduce yourself and what is Can We Talk Edu?
Thank you so much for having me. As Reshma mentioned, I am Stephanie Rothstein. Thank you so much to both you and Dr. Vishal for having me today, and lovely to see Guzman here helping out. It's just wonderful to see faces that make me feel like I'm right at home. So thank you very much. So as Reshma mentioned, I am Stephanie Rothstein. I live in Northern California. My job is that I am a TOSA, a teacher on special assignment in my school district, essentially an educational leader. I have my administrator credential, and I'm kind of moving between teacher role and moving into administrator, and I float in between. I also chair a design thinking pathway at one of the schools in the district. And that has afforded me the opportunity to test and try and do lots of things with my students. And one of those is something that I'm happy to share with you today. So the other little bit about my background, as Reshma mentioned, I am very proud to be an innovator, trainer, and coach within Google certifications. Happy to support anyone along any of those journeys. And yeah, lots more to come. I've been doing a lot more writing this year. So if there's more that you're interested in, I've been putting out a lot of articles with Edutopia and other publications. I have a chapter coming out in a book later on that should be in August. So there's more to come, and I'm excited to be moving more into writing and sharing. As far as this presentation goes, this has been something, I've been an educator for 18 years, and I started doing this from the very start. I actually began learning about personality and its impact in the classroom when I was in college. And I started to use it right away when I became a teacher to help me get to know my students. And then the last 10 years when I have been working in my design thinking, in the design thinking pathway, I've implemented it. And then when we moved into needing to be virtual, I needed to figure out a way to do this digitally. And that's how Can We Talk really came about. It was out of a true need that I needed to come up with a way that I could conduct this same kind of connection virtually. So I'm going to take you through, I know that most of you have taken the test, but if you have not, do not worry. You can still go to it and take it. I might need to run Autocrat in the background one more time. I'm just going to hit go on that. Sometimes there are thousands of names on which I'm very proud of on this Google Sheets, but sometimes it slows it down just a little bit when somebody new takes it. So I'm going to run it in case anyone just completed their exam. So that's happening in the background. So a few things that you should know about doing this, or really any personality assessment. And please, Reshma, if you see anybody, since I can't see you all, you are welcome to pause me. So any type of personality assessment, whether you're doing Myers-Briggs or True Colors, which is kind of an offshoot of Myers-Briggs, or any of them that are out there, I've taken them all and used them all. One of the things that I like about the way that that I've moved this is that really my emphasis is that we need them all. It isn't that one is better than another. It's really about how can we work best together. So what I find often is we will say to students and to adults, we need to collaborate, but we don't ever show them how to collaborate. And that really has become my focus, is in focusing on the how we do it, utilizing the knowledge that we get from this and then the actions that stand with it and behind it. And then working on how we can use it for good, how we find the strengths in others, assume best intentions, and also then how we can look at our own growth and learning from other people. So with that, as I mentioned, I'm going to give you an overview of each of the colors, this presentation and more types of it are on my website, CanWeTalkEdu.com. If you want to do something like this with your students, I have ones where it has my voice in it as well. So I'll show you all of that. Don't feel a pressure really to make sure that you know every single little bit. There's lots of tips and tools on the site. And I would say the first time that you're hearing it, it's really about taking it in and understanding your own connection, where you fall, so then you understand how to best present it for other people. So most of you at this point should have taken yours, and that's usually what I do with my students too. I have them take it, and then I don't tell them what the colors mean. So then they're coming in hungry to know what does it mean to be a gold? What does it mean to be a green? And so you'll see that there are little symbols on here that should help give you a little bit of a clue about each of them, and then I'll go into details. So in general, we have 4 colors, and for sure, some people may have noticed maybe their numbers are exactly the same on 2 of them, so you could be split in areas, and that happens. And so we can talk about how those play together. So our golds tend to be our people who are list oriented. They're driven by a task. They want to know that they're completing things and completing them and doing them right. And so that I often will start with my golds here because it will help them to hear that they know where they stand. And then our greens, if you see the light bulb, that's our big idea people. So our greens come up with large scale ideas typically, and we'll talk about some of the things that make greens quite special, and also golds and every other color. Our oranges tend to bring some liveliness to a group. And they tend to be like people who might get up and speak. And then our blues really are our feelers, I would say. If you've taken any of the other kinds of assessments, our blues really are people who think with the heart. Their first response is from the heart. So I'm going to take you into a little bit more detail about what each of those mean now. So our blues are people that they are the glue. I call them my blue glue because the blues really are the people that if you put them in a team, they will help that team to connect. So that is the first piece that helps a blue feel safe in a space, is feeling like they don't just know everyone, but everyone feels good about being there and connecting. They often will begin with the question, how are you? And they genuinely want to know how other people in the team are. My blues are those students when I'm in a group who will, on the last day of a presentation, I had one group member, she came in and she brought everybody matching socks. And I didn't tell her to do that. She just did that. She said, we have a presentation today. I brought everybody a sock, like socks to match. And sorry about my microphone, 1 second. And that just is very typical of a blue. Rajma,
that's interesting. That's interesting. Like I have seen some students and some colleagues also doing that. So probably now I know what color they might be.
For sure. Can you hear me okay, Rajma?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Carry on.
All right. So our blues, yes, our blue glues, I love them. And in addition, though, one of the things to think about is because blues really come from a place from the heart, it means that everything that you say is taken to heart. So with my students who are blues, oftentimes if I write anything, if I put any feedback on a paper as an English teacher, the first thought from somebody who is blue is, oh, she doesn't like me. even if I wrote things that are positive on it, if I've circled anything. So what I really have to do when I am talking to and working with a blue is I need to sandwich that feedback, and I need to help them know that they are appreciated. I need to first begin with, here are your real areas of strength. I know that you are a great writer, and there are a few things that we're going to work on to help you improve on a couple key points. And I need them to keep emphasizing that I see them, and I see that they're great. I see their potential. I see that they're working hard, all the good things that I'm seeing. Because a blue will take to heart anything that you say that is negative in a way perhaps that some of the other colors might be able to distinguish it from themselves, right? And saying like, oh, it has nothing to do with if I like this person or not. It really is about giving a critique or feedback. But a blue, those things are intermeshed. And so it's really important, not that I work on changing that, but that I work on meeting them where they are and helping to approach them so that they can hear me. And that really is the goal of Can We Talk? So our oranges are, as I mentioned, are our people. So whereas blues are coming in and asking how everyone else is doing, our oranges, their first question is, how is this going to impact me? Is it worth my time? Should I really be doing this? And they usually are people who are active. So our oranges just in general gravitate either towards sports oftentimes. Some of the things about the sports, it might not even be the movement. Some oranges really gravitate towards like needing change, frequent change. They might even right now as I'm talking be going, okay, next slide, right? Like they like things to move fast. Our oranges also thrive on competition. So whereas some of the other colors that might not be a key factor for them, and orange is really somebody that will go, oh my goodness, like when you play a game in class, they're really motivated by it. And then another strength of an orange is that while they might not be someone who necessarily does something very far in advance, they are really great at doing things impromptu. So oranges often, let's say we are giving a presentation and somebody becomes sick. An orange might be that person that says, I can introduce it, no problem. Just tell me what I need to say. And they will get up and do it. And it's a strength of theirs. Our oranges, I often describe them as having lots of charisma, right? There are people that might be able to talk themselves out of or talk others out of a particular situation. So they put on that smile and you know who they are. And then our greens are our big picture people, big question people. And so our greens, even in taking the survey, often a green is saying, well, what's the point? Why should I do this? What will I get out of it? They ask a lot of questions before diving in. I know the green well because I am a green. But I would also say that our greens are quite strategic. So that's what that first symbol is all about. It's really about how is it that we approach something in a way that makes the most sense. So often a green spends time in the research section before moving forward. We want to know that we are making a decision that makes the most sense given the issue at hand. And if it doesn't, then why do we take our time to do it? We might take just as much time researching or more, but it's though we need to know all of that information before embarking on moving forward. So our greens are really great at coming up with really giant, big ideas. Now, can they always be tackled in the time that you have? Not necessarily, but greens, that doesn't really stop them. I don't know that a green is bound by those kinds of rules. And then our golds, as I mentioned before, our golds really love to know when is something due, the task that is needed, and they will break things down into a list. And usually a gold is also someone where I could turn to them right away and say, okay, and when did I say that that was due? And they would know it right away. A gold tends to be focused on wanting to do something right, especially when it comes to for things for their teacher. So if you are giving your class more of an open-ended project, or in my case, being a design thinking pathway, giving lots of options or an open-ended question, a gold will often say, well, is this right? And in my English class, if we're writing an essay, there might not necessarily be a right. And sometimes that becomes a challenge for a gold, because a gold wants to know that a gold oftentimes will see certain things as right or wrong. And that just is inherent in who they are, right? To know that, but do you see it as right? They value that voice of the teacher. They want to know that their voice is validated. And until that teacher says so, sometimes they don't feel confident in moving forward. So a gold, often they will read, if you have a rubric, they will read it to the letter of the law. They will ensure that they have done every single thing that has been asked. So it's super important that for a gold, there is clarity in whatever way that you are going to be giving them feedback and in whatever way you are going to grade them. Because oftentimes if I'm giving a grade to a gold, they will have already looked at that part of the rubric. So if they're doing something that perhaps was a misstep, or they need some critique or feedback on to improve it, it might be because the way that I wrote the directions or instructions are not necessarily clear to all. So oftentimes if a gold missteps on a particular aspect of a task, it alerts me as a teacher that maybe I need some clarity in my instructions because I know that they've read them. And so it might just be that they interpreted them in a way that I didn't intend. But golds do not skip those directions. They make sure that they have gone through every single thing that is needed. So in a group, when you think about formulating a team, all of these have a role in that group and a role in ourselves too to learn from. And so really, as we come back to this, it really is about thinking, how do you utilize the strengths of everyone in this group, in this team, whether or not you're doing group work or projects, even in a class setting? How do you utilize it to help bring out the best in everyone and help them share and help them feel comfortable and confident? And so I often talk about even the way that we converse, talk to one another. How do we approach each other? So we begin in my classes, we begin with a few things. I already mentioned some of the feedback pieces, so I'm going to go to this one. So we begin with the slide that's up here in the top right. Some of the ways that we do it is my students will take their color test, and then after that they will use a slide and they'll introduce themselves to the class, to their team. They'll put their little color on, you'll see it's there on a little call out box that's by my face, or we have one for a group that's down below where you break up the whole class and they put their pictures, whichever color they are. And then the bottom right picture is what we did with my classes this year, where because I have older students, I had the students on a slide deck, and all of this is on the website, and they could pick, do they want to use a phone case, do they want to use a water bottle, or do they want to use a notebook? And certainly you could find other items that are more applicable to your students in your class. But I had all four colors, and if they were a mixture or a combination, they cut the pictures and put them together. And then they put stickers all over whatever colored item. So you'll see my phone case is green, and they put pictures of themselves and maybe a Bitmoji on there and an explanation. And that was used. We then created, students all recorded themselves in Flipgrid, explaining who they are and how the traits of their personality impact a little bit about their own working style, and what they prefer when they're working in a group, and maybe the kind of communication they prefer. And we used that. I didn't show it to the whole class. I had each small group, so we were in groups of between 4 and 6 at that point, watch the other group members of the Flipgrid and get to know each person before they entered into a breakout space with them. And then there was a safety to that. They really understood who they were in a group with before seeing them for the first time. After they watched it, then they moved in there, and then they came up with questions that they would want to ask each person based on what they had shared. And that's how they started some of those initial conversations in a breakout space together. And we gave them a slide to put down some of the new things that they learned about each other and how they plan to work together. There are so many uses when it comes to using this in the classroom. So this really is just a general slide in terms of thinking about all of the applications that teachers at my own school and other teachers that I have worked with now outside of my school. It's being used all over the world. It's been translated into multiple languages. So when people have talked to me about how they're using it, I wanted to share some of those examples. So one of the ways is you can use it obviously in the way that I have, where you're using it about yourself, and you're using it about your students, and you're helping us to connect and collaborate. That has always been my first application. But then you can also reinforce it when you are talking about anything within your curriculum. So if you're reading a book, perhaps you start to analyze the personality and the traits of the characters in the book. If I had someone else looking at in the middle picture is representing like a historical figure, perhaps. One of our teachers in history was asking, can we make any assumptions here or predictions based on what you think the personality trait of a particular historical figure was and why they acted in the way that they did. And then our chemistry teacher asked our students to then categorize some of the elements. So would you consider this element to be a lively element? Does it have a lot of personality? Does it work well with other people, right? So they started to personify the elements, and I love that, and the students did too. And because there's only 4, I often find, so there are many personality assessments out there, and they give you a ton of information. As I had mentioned before, I've taken them all. Some of them have 16, some have 32, there are many, and there are lots of combinations. My only quandary when it came to working with students was sometimes all of that information can become overwhelming. And so while I would say as a whole, people don't fit into just 4 categories, it is simplified enough in this assessment that it helps us really to get some clarity in the vision and how to move forward. And it doesn't mean that every single piece of it is going to apply to you. And I think that that is where we as adults, as educators, and even teaching our students, we can start to see and ask them, well, what aspect of this color do you think most applies to you? And did you score higher in other areas? So then where does that fill in for you? And how does maybe blue fill in some of those spaces? It lets us actually see where there might be some gray or some overlap, versus it being told to you at the start. And I find that for many of the students that I've worked with, some of the ones that give that to you at the onset, it becomes overwhelming to look at what that means. So one of the things that I ended up creating this year as a result of this project, it became one of my innovator projects when I kept getting asked after I gave a presentation just like this for Global GEG. And really that presentation was because in our own leadership team, I said, I'm thinking some of the like we weren't having major issues, but I'm just going to say some of the issues or disputes or little things that we were having, I kept seeing them from the outside going, oh, that's just because this person works in this way and this person works in this way. Do you want me to give a presentation on this? I do this in my classroom. And then I said, do you want it to be an internal presentation? And then they suggested that it be something for not just Global GEG, but something that went on our YouTube channel and bigger. So that's what I did. And then I got a lot of requests for how can I use this in my classroom? So then all of the other presentations and pieces came out of that. And then that got me thinking, well, what do we do with this? So now I know my personality, like how do I use this for the better? And so I've had monthly challenges, and people have worked on them on their own, and then there's ways to give feedback on them. This is the one for March and April. I've started to move it into 2 months. I might even move it into 3. Sometimes it takes people a while to work on something that is geared at self-improvement. And so for each color, there's a challenge. And the idea of this, and you can go back and you could do any of them from previous months. There's nothing stopping you. But the goal of this is to help people to learn from the strengths of the other colors. So for a gold often might see certain things, and this is the way that it must be done. So to ask a gold to praise someone else from another color group and tell them what you've learned from them is going to help them see outside of themselves in that way. And then a green often can work solo, independent, and be fine with that. And so asking them to be a thought partner to someone and really listen instead of sharing ideas, and hopefully help them to grow and learn from that. For a blue, blue often is trying to be the glue, so asking them to volunteer to lead something that they wouldn't normally do before. And for an orange, for these 2 months, reaching out to someone in the group well before something is due, and then asking them how they can support them in accomplishing it. So getting them to maybe think about the way that a gold might work in terms of time and organization and order, and how can we learn from the best of all of these. Along with that, if you go to the website, there's a ton of information that is there. There's an overview of the colors, there's a video presentation, there is the survey itself. If you teach younger students, there's a survey geared at elementary. It has 11 questions. And then it has all of the different resources that I've shown you, plus more today. And then as it keeps going, you'll see these right here. These are presentations that include, I have Pear Deck versions, Nearpod, and slides that include audio. And then it's also in a few languages. Right now it's in Spanish and Italian. And so usually what I ask at the end of these is for us to start to reflect. And so maybe we can start to do this for a little bit. And then I might need to move myself into the house at a break, Reshma. I'm realizing my power in I'm in the garage to not wake up my family. And the power strip is not working when I plugged in my computer in the wall. So I will work on that in just a moment, just to warn you. I'll pause myself for a second. But these are the questions. What I would love to know in the chat as I go to plug myself in here is what color you are and how do you think that this impacts the way that you work or work with others? So what color are you and how does this impact how you work or work with others? And I'll give everybody a minute to put that in the chat while I'm plugging in the computer. I promise I'm still here.
No worries. Take your time, Stephanie. So just like Stephanie said, we all know our colors now. And let us tell about what you learned about yourself and how are you going to, and your students from Can We Talk. Feel free to turn on your mic and just talk if you like.
So before we begin, colors are basically they identify who you are, what is your type of personality, and it's not a case of color bar over here. It's green is equally fine, blue is equally fine. Every color is having its own charm. So here it's not about it's not like the gold is something better than green or blue is something better than orange or something. It's not there's no comparison at all. Colors are just indicative of who you are, irrespective of any value we perceive. So what's important to learn here is, see, if you know the color code of the person, of the student, right, then you can devise your exercise, you can devise your projects accordingly, you can have those different color people in one particular project, so the project will be having all sorts of people in it to work for the project. So this is how we are to use this thing. So it's basically psychology or any psychometric test is for the purpose of understanding the person and not having a bias toward the person. So having known the color code of the person, you must be able to harness the capacity of that person, harness the strength of that person, and allow to that person or student or whatever the project may be. So I'm sure most of us, we know the type of the person, but we must have not had this kind of psychometric analysis or psychological analysis. This is what we are supposed to learn from today's session.
Okay, so I'm loving it. I'm seeing people. Okay, so we have a gold here, and please correct me if I'm saying it. Is it Kurti? Correct me if I am incorrect. So I don't want to mispronounce your name. Okay, hi Kurti.
Hi.
And so you said that you are gold and you like to make lists to complete your tasks. So as a gold, do you find that when you make a list to complete your task, like, do you feel calmed by the list?
Yes, I do that. I really find it very useful to make list and complete my task.
And then the other piece to think about is, when you are working on something or working with others, right, that idea of thinking about certain things as this is the right way to do it, I think is often a thing to think about as a gold, depending on what you're working on. And that a gold usually wants to know, right, am I doing this the way that the teacher wants me to do it? And so what happens if there's not a way for the teacher to want you to do something, right? So how do we move forward? And it might be about utilizing some of the other colors, maybe to bulk up in that area to go, no, that's okay. We're going to dream big on this and we're going to move, right? And so I absolutely love that. And usually my golds, when I am organizing teams, I usually put the golds in a group first. I try to split you up.
because it will really help. It helps to have someone who naturally loves to organize and have certain things set up, because that way, if you make a scrum board or whatever way you are organizing information for a team, that gold will already have that mapped out for the group. That's just in them. And so it becomes really a great strength. I see that we have a few greens. We have Deepti and Amarjit are both greens. And I loved, okay, so green, satisfying curiosity, love that. And then another one for green from Amarjit was wanting to ask others for a color, and put a common talk discussion and grab everyone's views. So this is the idea of like, perhaps that's just your natural way of wanting to question and learn from others. And I think that tends to be a great strength of a green, right? Is before I make any sort of conclusions or assumptions, I'm going to ask some questions first. That is what a green usually does. I often will sit in research time for a very long time before I come to a conclusion. It takes me longer sometimes to embark on completing a task or a project because I want to know all the things that have come before it. Which is why with Can We Talk, I took every other thing that's out there before deciding which assessment I liked. That just is who I am. And so there are, there was a question I'm seeing. What about other colors that are not mentioned? So I would say these are the 4 colors within this survey. I did not mention it at the start. It was a survey. It dates back to 1972. It's from a researcher named Ketterman, who actually worked with Myers and Briggs at one point. And True Colors is a survey. I didn't make this up. So the color survey already existed. It's just more how I'm applying it to the classroom, and that I've digitized it. It was always a paper form that I was using with my students. And then the fact that it's digitized and you get this piece emailed to you, and then the application. So the 4 colors are the 4 colors. Now, if you are a combination of those, or you feel like, actually not everything from this represents me, there are this aspect, it's really a way to analyze yourself. And Dr. Narjit was saying, I guess these are umbrella colors. I would agree with that, right? Like, yeah, it's a umbrella colors. And then for sure, there are going to be pieces where if you are strongest in 2 of them, then if when you looked at the data of it, that you had 2 numbers that ranked really close to one another, then perhaps those are your areas of most strength, where you most gravitate. It doesn't mean that you don't ever do something that would be like an orange, or that you don't ever do something that would be like a blue. And one of the other pieces is that these things can shift and change. So when I have students take this in the 9th grade, where they are in the 12th grade, that for sure can change. Our personalities are not fixed. There are certain things that when I look at my own 3 children, right, it's just there are certain things that are in them from when they were born. But there are areas where if we work on it, if there are areas where you want to grow, if you're seeking that, for sure there are areas where we can start to move in different directions. When I first started doing this work 20 years ago, I would have for sure been a blue. And that would have been my top color. And when I took Myers-Briggs, I was 100% on the F. And now I am more green. And it was after particular jobs that have impacted me, or had me start to look at and go, okay, when I'm in my job role, perhaps I need to be able to hear people when they're giving me feedback. I'm in a role where I'm going to receive lots of feedback all the time. And so it's just helped me to shift and approach problems from a different perspective. And then this presentation can be accessed here, this bit.ly. I'll put it in the chat if anyone wants the slide deck for it. But as mentioned, we can go to Can We Talk, and there's all of the resources that are there as well. But it is, oh, and I apologize because I did it when I didn't realize that we were connected. I could make a new bit.ly for you. So I'm sorry that it's only representing one of the GEGs. So please know that was not a slight on purpose.
No, don't worry. Yeah,
that's completely okay, Stephanie. That's completely
Thank you. All right.
We share everything in both the groups. Whatever we find, we just put it so that it reaches most people.
Excellent. Okay.
So Stephanie, I had a quick question. Sorry to interrupt you. As you said that each student's personalities matters while they work in the classroom. So while you were telling about this, I was just going back in my classroom and just thinking about the students that I have there who, instead of doing their own work, they're always worried about if their partner is working. So how do you make them work? Do you club them with students who are gold to help them motivate and be on task? Because they end up being helpers and caretakers of somebody else instead of doing their own work.
That's one of my own kids too. So yes, one of the things that I often do, and I use Jamboard a lot for this, is I will use the 4 different sticky notes, and I will make my groups in Jamboard for students. And I try to, and I'm very honest with students. So I make them the colors. If we were in my classroom, I actually wrote an article about this, but if we were in my classroom, what you would see on the wall is students' pictures and them holding a colored piece of cardstock or notebook paper, and it had their name written on it. And I would go around on the second day of school and I'd take everyone's photo. And then I would take one of those boards usually used in elementary school classrooms, maybe to show the days of the week or the month, right? And it has all of the little, the little holders in it. And I'd put all of their pictures to help them group by group. And what I would do is I would map out who is with who. So I would first look at the golds, and I'd put golds in a group. And then I would look at usually either green or blue. And I would put a balance of those in every team. And then I call them like sprinkling in my personality of my oranges and making sure that every group has some oranges. And you might not always have where you can have every color in every team, but if you can have at least 2, it's going to help you. At least 2. And when you have just 1 in a group, sometimes what you end up finding is it's comedic often, right? So if you have all of the greens will sit there and like talk about why we should do something and not get it done. If you have oranges, there might not be anyone that can kind of like corral or harness all that energy. And if you have all the blues, they might just be like quite, as you were mentioning, like happy to like sit there and connect with one another versus moving forward. And our golds, we might need people who can like liven things up a little bit or feel like they can go beyond the task being asked, right? So like people who can push us in different ways. So it's wonderful to have a group that can help to support one another. And what you were saying, Reshma, about perhaps having people who they want to help others and not focus on themselves. I think the best way to get students to realize that a shift needs to happen is to give them time to reflect on their process. So what I usually do is I have people move into a team. When they're in that team, they get to know one another and we talk about what strengths do they each have. As I mentioned, they reflect on it. Then after they've done that, throughout the process of them working together on a day, we'll pause and they will do a reflection. So maybe I give them a Google form or they write it out or they record a Flipgrid about how it is working with this one person or others, and what feedback would they give them about being a great partner. What feedback do they think they're going to receive? Where are areas of improvement for themselves when it comes to working in a team? How can they better approach other people? And how can people in the team better approach them? I ask the students to do that because there are going to be things as a teacher I don't see. And that allows them to have that like metacognition moment of realizing how do I analyze what I've been doing and how do I get better? And we will never get better unless we actually reflect on the process. And so giving them time throughout, if it's a longer project, maybe that becomes once a week or once every 2 weeks that you pause to do that reflection and you work on some goals, whether those be personal goals and also some goals for the group.
Yeah, thank you. And
No
we have
problem.
a hand raised from Dr. Vishal.
Yes, Dr. Vishal.
So just working with Stephanie, and I think I did rightly perceive when I did analyze this color test. So as we were discussing while Stephanie was not, I was away, that we need to, the group needs to be a heterogeneous group that should include different colors in one project. So every color or every type of personality has its uniqueness. So we need, all kind of students or all kind of people in a project who would be planners, who would be, who would be thinkers, who would be all people around, and who would be having some feelings, because emotions does matter. So in case, I mean, if you are aware of the student, of the type of the personality of the student, then as a teacher, you can better create a group that is having a heterogeneous type of students, and you can work that project with wonderful results. So that is the utility of this particular test. And as such, color doesn't matter much. This is a way of identifying the strength of a candidate or the strength of the child, and then harnessing it to the benefit of the project. So, and I would again say acknowledge Stephanie, or agree with her, that yes, with time and experience, there would be changes in the personality. So there would be changes in the color test. So if you take the color test today, maybe you could get a green, or you could get a gold, and then you work with your teammates, and year on year, and you take the color test again, maybe there could be some change in the color. So this keeps on changing with your experience. This keeps on changing with the tasks you do. So it's not about having say bias with the color. It's not about having that, oh, I'm not gold. It's not missing it or not highlighting it, but it's about valuing the skills or the strengths that a person is having, and involving those students of different types into one single project. That is the utility of this test. I suppose I'm putting it the right way, Stephanie.
That was perfect. And I would also say, I never want a student to feel like they can use their personality as an excuse for anything either, right? Like, I think we all have areas of growth. Every single person does. And so instead of saying like, well, I didn't do that because that's just not my way, that doesn't work for me, right? It's about saying, okay, so what's an area of growth? How do I learn from this? What do I learn from the people around me? And how can that help to make me better and help to bring about the success that I am seeking, or the success in this particular task, right? Yes, I love the way that you put that every person should be valued for their strengths, Dr. Vishal, and that we can then grow and learn from the strengths of one another. That's great. And so overall, this really has just helped me to see the world, to see people, to see my own family. I can't help it. I was talking before with Reshma about how now when I look at people and I first meet them, after I meet my students, I start to go, I think I can tell who you are. But I also don't want to assume to the point where I pigeonhole anyone. So letting them tell me a bit more, and this provides an opening. It isn't that it means that this is exactly who they are all the time. But I do find that even our parents, like when my parents come to back to school night at our school, I don't know what it's called in India, if it's the same name, but when we do parent check-ins, this is a piece that families love. So usually for my back to school night, what I have the students do is I have them record on Flipgrid or some other way of video. I have them record a little bit about what they've been learning in class. They also record how their own personality has impacted what they've learned about that, and what are their goals for growth. And we record it, and then I make a little note. I make a little note card. It has the student's picture on it, has their name on it, and it has the QR code for their Flipgrid video. And I put those out on the table, or I will email it to parents, and then they can watch those. So after we've talked about what's going on in the whole class, they can then look at their own student's video. And I find that a student being able to speak for themselves and their own areas of growth and what they're seeking, parents tend to, then they start to look at it and go, oh, and then I ask the parents to take it and they go, it is interesting that I'm this way and they're this way, and maybe that's why sometimes we butt heads about certain things, or I go about working on a task in this way. It has helped a lot. I had a mom write me and say, this has really helped me begin to take on how I have a conversation with my son. And she was saying that her son was a blue, and that she realized, like, when she would give feedback, that perhaps her feedback was being taken to heart too quickly. And so, or very quickly, because that's how he heard it. And so then she looked at, well, how do I give him feedback where he actually can hear me? So I love that.
Yeah. Sorry, Stephanie, you have more of your presentation because we have a few more questions now in the chat.
Yeah, I'm happy to. There's let's see. I stopped the presentation because really the end was just about questions, but I'm happy to put it back up if that helps for anybody.
So some of the questions that I see is, can they just use your form directly in their classes and give the survey?
Oh, yes. Okay, that's a great question. You can. If you want the data for analysis for yourself, I'm glad that you asked that. And I'm trying to look to see who said that so I can thank you very much. Let's see. Is that Kurti? Yes. Okay, so yes, you can find it here. So I'm going to open up that tab right now, actually. And I'm going to share it and show you a few things that are here, because that is what I didn't do. It's as though I didn't even pay you to do that. So good. Okay, so here we are. This is the website. And then if you want to find resources for yourself, if you go under resources, and when you're here, you can make your own copy of the form. And so you can for sure take it on mine. That is not a problem at all. And they'll get it emailed to them. If what you want to be able to see is the analysis of who's what color and how many are there in my class, and you know that before the student shows it to you, then you would want to make a copy of the sheet. It would involve using Autocrat, which is an extension. And then this guides you through it. These are you do number one, then you make sure that you have a template. If you don't want to have to do any of this, you can certainly do it through mine. And then you could ask students perhaps to turn in their certificates to you, or to do the group slide that I have here. And then you know what everyone's personality strengths are. This has speaker notes if you want to present it. It also has the presentations for students with my voice in it, with Google Slides, Nearpod, and Pear Deck. All of those are here, and it has the full presentation, and it can even be a self-guided presentation for students if you want them to do something asynchronously. So that is available as well.
Wonderful. So it is already made for the educators, or they can even make a copy for themselves if they want to get the results directly to them.
Yes, and if you're not familiar, so prior to this, I just have to give credit, Luis Pertuz, who's also one of the global founders. He helped me with sheets and doing the Autocrat piece. It was not something I had done before, and now I'm quite familiar now that we're a year into doing this. But before that, I hadn't. So if you are someone where you've never used Sheets in that way or used Autocrat in that way, there's a video that guides you through it. It shows you how to do it. But if you have any questions, you can feel free to email. And then if there are requests, or if there are others, depending on languages spoken in schools, just let me know. And if people are using it in different ways, I would love to post it up on the website. So feel free to let me know if there's anything or any way that I can be of help.
I'm sure that will be a great idea. Basically, if we can just translate it into the national language of India, that is Hindi, or like Dr. Varia is from a state that speaks a different language, Gujarati. Mm-hmm. And then if we can translate it, and then that would give it more exposure and understanding while answering the questions, probably.
I love that. Mm-hmm. That's a true goal. Like if I could have it in a ton of languages that are on there. So that has come from friends and very cherished colleagues. So I would value that very much. And if it would help others, that's why I'm here. So it's just anything that people share, I keep putting that back up there.
Yeah. Any other questions? Please post it in the chat, or Stephanie is with us. You can just unmute yourself and talk. That is why we usually have these meet sessions, so that we are open in discussing and letting know what they would like. So Stephanie, a question again popped in my mind. Mm-hmm. Because I've seen your presentation like 10 times, because I just love this kind of, I love analyzing people. And when I saw these things, these traits, it just made it very easy. So another question is, this can be used with adults in the school also, right? With the school management and with having projects within the school, and then helping make groups of teachers to work on a specific goal or something?
That is a great question. Yes, I do use it. So as I had mentioned, I chair a team, and I'm kind of in an in-between role where I do leadership and admin work for my school. So yes, I use it with my teams. All the teachers, all of our staff takes it. And when I do think about making a group, there are some times where I won't have a choice in getting to build a team. But what helps me is if a team is already in place, I need to know who I'm working with. And so this is often a way that even if you didn't have, to be honest with you, for adults, even if you didn't have the adults take the survey, you could sit and talk to them about the 4, and you could say, do you find that you gravitate towards working in one of these 4 ways or in 2 of these? And what do you feel like are your biggest strengths? Even if you didn't necessarily have the time to take the whole survey, it opens up a conversation. And I find that those conversations work well when it isn't just me coming in and saying, okay, I don't know that this is working for the team, but if you have that kind of like third party, that survey to be out there, or they've already said it, it allows you to go, okay, so when we're working together, how would you like me to approach you? If the way that you often take things, if you're saying you take things to heart, so what would help you hear me when I need to give you feedback on this project? And you could just ask, I think when it comes with students too, but especially for adults, like giving them some onus and power in that situation and going like, well, yeah, it would help me if when you come to me, you could acknowledge the things that I've done before, and then we can talk through some of the feedback. Or someone might say, well, before we move forward and we just jump right in, can I get all my questions out? And can we start there? I often find, depending on the makeup of a team, right, a blue usually wants to have some sort of a check-in that is a connection piece at the start of a session. And sometimes if you don't have a blue, or there are fewer of them in a space, people will jump into the task, or they'll jump right in. And so if you're trying to honor who's there and helping everyone feel comfortable, then what you're going to want to do is say, well, how should we begin this session? Or maybe this time we haven't done enough connection pieces. So let's start off going around and we'll take 5 minutes. And if you at least say a time, a gold will feel calmed. They'll know, okay, we're going to get to the task soon, right? So it's not as though they're unfeeling in any way. It's just that they want to know that we're going to get done what we need to get done. And that calms the gold, right? So those are the pieces that I think help, especially with adults, is giving them the power in the situation to actually talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great perspective, because we see this in the classroom, but I'm sure it will help us working within our school management and colleagues. Okay, do we have any more questions? Or anybody wants to say something? I will be sharing all the links pretty soon with all the details and everything that Stephanie shared with us. And I'm putting up the feedback form for our today's session, because we do have 5 minutes, but as our ritual, we take a whole group picture every time. And Dr. Varia, who takes group pictures for us. So, Dr. Varia, you want to
yeah. So
take
before
charge?
we go to the end of this session of ours, as you mentioned that, and would like to comment anything, is that psychometric tests, any kind of psychometric test that you take for a group or for the students, for a class, whether it may be for your staff members or whether it may be for the students, they help you analyze the type of the person. Now, it only will make sense if you are able to harness the strength of the person in that manner. In India, I will just quote an example. You must have heard about 6 types of intelligence by Howard Gardner. So taking a test of 6 types of intelligence of the child, of Howard Gardner, you come to know that the child is a kinesthetic, or a child is like this, or 6 types. But it will make sense only if you have that environment to explain the child in the way his personality is meant for. So, this test is just a diagnostic test. जैसे आपने ब्लड रिपोर्ट करवाया और आपको पता चला कि ये आपका डिजीज है, तो उसका इलाज अलग से करना होता है. Sorry, Stephanie, I had to use a different language, Hindi. So the point is, it matters. A psychometric test will matter if you're able to create an environment in which you can deal with different types of people. So it's not only about having knowledge about the personality, it's about harnessing the different types of personality towards the benefit of the larger goal or the organization. So this is what we have to keep in mind when we use any kind of psychometric test. It should not then we should not be having a biased view in the class. Oh, you are a green, you would not understand this. You are a blue, this is not meant for you. So see, it's very natural for us when, being a teacher, we may just unknowingly speak it out. So in this case, we have to be very, very careful that it's not to label a child, it's not to label a person, it's not to have a bias towards a person, but it's basically to understand the type of the person. And these things change with experience and time. So nothing is permanent. Right, I think that was something I wanted to share with everyone. Thanks, Stephanie, for this wonderful session. And I would request everyone to please come on live for a quick picture, selfie. Chalo. I wish everyone to please wake up. Stephanie has been a very good mentor today. I'm sure you would not be sleeping right now. Anyway, so if at all, kindly come on to your camera, please.
And just to let you know, when I feel demotivated, when I don't know what to do, I just go to Global GEG website and I just hear all those learning sessions, and you just feel so motivated just listening to. Yes, Guzman is saying yes, and that is what all I have been doing in the last 8 months. So Stephanie, we have been encouraging all our group to take the GCE level 1, level 2, and telling them how trainers work. So me and Dr. Varia just became trainer in November, and our journey started, my journey actually started in May and June. It was not very long back. So I'm still learning, but I really want to put it up in front of more people to show how you connect with wonderful educators like Stephanie, Guzman. I would have never known them if I would have not gone into this kind of platform.
This is the power of collaboration. Yes. Yeah, so kindly, I would request everyone to kindly please come on to the screen. Please switch on your videos. आ जाओ चलो सब अभी पता है खाने का टाइम हो गया है. So before we break for dinner.
In India, it's dinner time. So he's saying, I know it's dinner time. So
before we break for the dinner, please give us that smile of yours to motivate us all. So kindly please come onto the screen, and I shall be clicking the image in about, say, count of 5. Right? You can have a thumbs up like this.
Yes,
right?
I like how this Monday.
Yeah. So it's a count of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we go. Yes. Thank you, one and all.
Yes, thank you. And Stephanie, I would again like to thank you from GEG Ahmedabad and GEG Pune. We have educators from Indonesia, Malaysia, Canada today.
Amazing.
As well as India. Sorry, yeah, Philippines as well. And I know a lot of countries, and they're here to hear you and learn from you. So thank you very much for sparing your time. It was 6:30 morning in US for her, and Stephanie has been working really hard. She was on multiple talks. What I attended, a couple of them from her school and the other paper company. So it's always good to hear from her and learn a lot. So thank you so much, Stephanie, for jumping in and saying that you will be happy to present this for us.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for asking, and thank you so much
session.
for having me. Thank you so much. Oh, wonderful to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Meena. Thank you, Guzman. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Vishal, and thank you, Reshma. It was wonderful to meet you all and be here, and feel free to reach out. And I'm more than happy to be a partner in anything and support you all. So thank you.
Thank you. So I think, Reshma, let's